Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
You read books about purpose. You speak about discipline. You visualize greatness. But you scroll for hours. You promise yourself tomorrow. You betray the very standards you glorify. And the brain records every contradiction. It doesn't care about your intentions. It watches your decisions. And when they clash with your core beliefs, it punishes you. With hesitation. With fatigue. With anxiety that doesn't seem to have a source. You think it's burnout. You think it's external chaos. But the slowdown is internal. The system is compromised. It's trying to resolve the gap between who you say you are and how you actually move. And that mental lag bleeds into everything. Your speech loses clarity. Your actions lose conviction. Your presence loses impact. Because the brain cannot operate at full power while lying to itself. And the longer you pretend, the heavier the dissonance becomes, until even the smallest task feels like lifting stone. That's not laziness. That's neurological resistance. Alignment is not a spiritual idea. It's a biological necessity. When what you do matches what you believe, the brain shifts gears. The pathway's clear. Energy surges. Focus sharpens. You don't just act, you lock in. You move without friction because your system is no longer at war with itself. And that flow you feel, that's not magic. That's optimization. That's how your brain rewards truth, with momentum, with fire, with clarity so precise, doubt can't survive in the same room. This is why many never access their full potential, because they're constantly negotiating with themselves, living in between values and behavior. One foot in discipline, one foot in addiction, one hand on the dream, one hand on distraction. And the brain can't code that chaos. It spins, it stalls, it floods you with guilt, with fatigue, with a restlessness that meditation won't fix. You don't need more peace. You need more integrity, because peace doesn't come from stillness. It comes from internal unity. The fire within doesn't burn where dissonance lives. You can't carry flames and lies in the same chest. One will choke the other. So you either purify through discipline or you decay through contradiction. There's no middle. The flame is allergic to hypocrisy. You want it to burn brighter? Then clean the fuel. Clean your habits. Clean the gap between your spoken ambition and your lived behavior. You don't need more hours. You need more honesty. Look at the greats. Their fire didn't come from talent alone. It came from total immersion. Their life wasn't divided into compartments. They were the same behind closed doors as they were on stage. Their values weren't performative. They were operational. That kind of consistency creates mental efficiency most can't comprehend. Because when every action is aligned with intention, nothing leaks. No energy lost. No time wasted debating yourself. Just pure, uninterrupted forward motion. You want to move faster? Stop compromising. You want clarity? Stop lying. You want momentum? Live truth. The man who moves in alignment doesn't just get more done. He carries more presence. His voice cuts deeper. His posture commands more. Because you can feel when someone lives what they preach. And that resonance, that harmony between being and doing, is rare. It's rare because it's earned, in the hours when no one's watching, in the choices made in silence. And when you live like this, you don't need reminders to stay focused. Your mind doesn't drift. Your heart doesn't hesitate. Your body doesn't resist. The system becomes synchronized. You show up early without force. You grind without glorifying it. You recover without guilt. That is the fire in full expression. Not just a spark of motivation, but a lifestyle of integrity so deep The world begins to orbit around your presence. This is why alignment matters. Not because it feels good, but because it removes waste. And in that space where waste once lived, fire grows. Every ounce of you becomes available to the mission. Every thought, every breath, every movement supports the next. And in that rare state, the impossible begins to look probable. But none of it arrives if you don't face the mirror first. The mirror that shows you the tiny betrayals, the silent inconsistencies, the self-inflicted leaks that keep your fire smothered. That mirror never lies, and it never stops showing up. You don't fix the dissonance once. You monitor it daily. Every decision is a vote. Every action is a broadcast. And the longer you live in alignment, the more violent your fire becomes. Not chaotic, but controlled. A quiet force that reshapes rooms without ever needing to raise its voice. That's the real edge. The man who doesn't need intensity to prove his power. Because his power is rooted in alignment, and alignment is a nuclear engine, self-generating, self-sustaining, unstoppable. That's how you ignite the fire within, and that's how you keep it burning long after everyone else burns out. But the truth is, your subconscious is already on the move. It's adjusting, adapting, recording, storing, mapping. Every time you show up to work without feeling ready, it logs it. Every time you resist comfort, it sharpens. Every time you step into discomfort instead of retreating, it rewires. You don't feel the shift because your awareness is behind it. That lag between input and recognition, that's the battlefield. And most never survive it. Doubt doesn't come from failure. Doubt comes from lag. The time gap between action and outcome. You've been doing the right things, but you're not seeing the right results yet. So your brain turns on you. It feeds you the same question like venom. Why hasn't anything changed? And because your conscious mind can't see what's building beneath the surface, you start to believe the lie. That effort isn't working. That growth isn't happening. But that's not truth. It's delay. And if you can outlast it, you'll see what most never do. That transformation was happening the entire time, just below the threshold of awareness. This is why people quit when they're inches away. Because they can't feel what's forming. Because their definition of progress is too shallow, too immediate, too visible. But the deepest changes always come last. Your subconscious builds in the shadows and only reveals the upgrade when it's stable. Until then, it tests you. It watches if you'll stay disciplined without applause, if you'll stay focused without feedback, if you'll carry the fire without the flame lighting the room. And if you do, if you endure without evidence, you earn the upgrade, not just in results, but in identity. The 11 million bits are real. Every environment you enter, every tone in a conversation, every facial expression, every repetition, every failure, every comeback, every unspoken decision. Your subconscious catches them all. It's building a map of who you're becoming before you can articulate it. The lag isn't a punishment, it's a filter. To see who's serious, to see who keeps showing up not because of reward, but because of belief. Those who endure this gap, they are dangerous. Because when the conscious catches up, they don't just wake up, they detonate. Survive the lag, and your awareness becomes weaponized. You start to feel everything with more precision. You walk into a room and sense alignment or resistance without needing explanation. You speak, and your words carry weight, because your actions built a mind that doesn't speak from theory. It speaks from embodiment. But that version of you only exists if you make it through the fog, if you walk through the valley of nothingness and still act like the king of your fate, even when no one sees. especially then. And what kills most during this phase is their addiction to feedback. They want signs, progress bars, applause. They want the world to tell them they're doing it right. But the fire within doesn't answer to applause. It answers to repetition. And if you abandon the repetition because the flame didn't show up on schedule, you never had fire. You had convenience. Fire shows up late, dressed in silence, carrying the reward only after you've stopped asking for it. Every major turning point in your life will begin with the illusion that nothing is happening. That's not coincidence. That's design. Because you're not just building muscle, you're proving intention. You're not just upgrading your mind, you're testing your loyalty to your own evolution. Your subconscious is always listening. And the question it's asking is this: will you persist even when your conscious mind thinks you're failing? If the answer is yes, it opens the gate. Not before. Never before. You feel lost, but that's just the lag distorting your perception. The man you're becoming is already under construction. He's just not available to you yet. But he will be. When you've earned enough repetitions, when you've suffered enough silence, when you've stayed long enough for the signal to return. And when it does, it hits like thunder. You wake up one day, do the same thing you've done for months, and suddenly, it clicks. You flow. You move like the future version of you has possessed the present. Because he has. That's when the fire goes from spark to inferno. Because now you trust it. Not emotionally, but neurologically. Your brain has caught up to your behavior. The lag has ended. And now, every movement, every decision, every discipline feels like you. Not forced, not faked, fused. That's the moment the inner war ends. Not because the battle is over, but because the soldier has become the fire. Cognitive dissonance isn't just emotional friction. It's biological sabotage. Your brain loses up to 30% of its efficiency when your values and actions don't align. Imagine driving with the handbrake pulled halfway. You're accelerating, burning fuel, pushing harder, but getting nowhere fast. That's what living out of alignment feels like. Your environment updates faster than your internal story. That's the quiet trap. You've started working harder. You've cleaned your space. You've dropped the distractions. You've adjusted your routine. Everything around you has evolved. But inside, behind your ribs, in the halls of your subconscious, you're still living like the old version never left. That's why progress feels like a mask. That's why momentum stutters. The reflection changes, but the narrative doesn't. And you don't self-sabotage because you're afraid of success. You sabotage because you don't recognize success as yours. It feels borrowed. It feels temporary. And so, piece by piece, you destroy it. Not out of fear, out of familiarity. Identity lags behind effort. That's the curse of growth. You change your actions, but your self-image is stuck in the rear view. It takes time for the brain to recalibrate, to rewire its assumptions about who you are. Neuroplasticity, the science of becoming, doesn't honor your ambition. It honors repetition, consistency, time. And 66 days? That's the threshold, not of mastery, but of belief. If you can hold the line for 66 days, your internal world begins to match your external grind. The thoughts catch up. The story updates. The image you carry in your mind begins to resemble the man you're actually becoming. Most people never make it that far. They change the behavior, but they don't stick around long enough to change the belief. They get 30 days in, then the doubt creeps in. They have one off day, and the old identity whispers, "See, I knew you'd fall." And instead of arguing, they agree. They step back into the cage, thinking it's safety, but it's just memory. a memory playing on loop so often, they confuse it for fate. But fate belongs to those who rewrite the loop. The new you doesn't arrive with a celebration. He arrives in fragments, in quieter reactions, in smaller choices, in the moment you say no to the thing you always said yes to, in the hour you show up when no one's watching. He forms in the background while you're sweating through the process. And one day, without warning, you respond differently. You walk into a room and feel heavier, cleaner, more deliberate. You notice that you don't notice your old triggers. And that's when it hits you. You've arrived. Not completely. Not forever. But enough to see that fire takes time to burn through the dead wood of who you used to be. The flame doesn't take root until the identity holds. That's the real ignition point. Not when you start. Not when you're hyped. But when your nervous system finally says, "This is who I am now." When the resistance fades, not because it's easier, but because you've made it home. Because the version of you who had to force himself to train, to focus, to resist comfort, he's gone. You've become the man who wants the weight. Because now, effort aligns with identity. But you have to survive the in-between. That brutal middle where your actions say one thing and your mind still argues another. That's the desert. No validation, no confirmation. Just the quiet tension between who you were and who you're becoming. You will feel crazy, alone, misunderstood. And that's how you know you're close. Because change is not polite, it's violent. It shatters the lens through which you've seen yourself for decades. And it will fight you before it frees you. The flame within burns hottest when you earn it through patience. When you refuse to sprint toward illusion. When you sit in the discomfort and let the rewiring happen. And that fire becomes sacred. You won't trade it for anything. Not for comfort. Not for shortcuts. Because now you know what it cost. You know what it took to become the man who doesn't quit, who doesn't flinch, who doesn't look around for approval. He just moves, and his movement leaves a trail of light in its wake. That's the moment the sabotage stops, when you're no longer pretending, when you're no longer hoping to become something. You are. You wake up and your environment doesn't feel like a costume anymore. The habits don't feel like effort anymore. The mission doesn't feel like pressure, it feels like home. And when you arrive there, you realize this is what you were chasing all along. Not just outcomes, not just transformation, but alignment. You think the fire within is lit in day one. Number. That's the spark. The fire is lit when the man who shows up is the man you believe you are. When you stop looking for proof because you are the proof. When you stop waiting for someone to crown you and instead realize you crowned yourself the day you stayed in the storm long enough to see the sky change. The brain processes 11 million bits of information per second, but your conscious mind only registers 40. 40. That means you're walking through life guided by a lighthouse that's barely turned on. You think you're lost because your awareness can't see the path. There's a silence that comes before transformation. Not peace, not stillness, but a silence that weighs. Like the moment before a volcano rips open the earth. That silence is what most people run from. They fill it with noise, scrolling, talking, consuming, anything to keep from hearing their own dissatisfaction. But the fire doesn't live in noise. The fire waits in silence. It whispers, then it roars. And if you don't ignite it, it burns you from the inside. Because fire never stays idle. It either consumes or creates. You choose which, and most never choose. They drift, they decay. But the few, the obsessed, the reborn, they light the match and burn the old world down. You think the fire comes from motivation, from pep talks, from some external spark. The fire comes from friction, from dragging yourself through boredom, through resistance, through fatigue. It comes from staring at the version of you you've always been and saying, "This ends now." That's ignition. That's when the first flame licks your insides. You feel it in your stomach before your mind catches up. It doesn't ask for permission. It consumes hesitation. It laughs at self-doubt. And once it takes, it doesn't go out. It spreads. If you feed it, if you fuel it, if you're brave enough to let it destroy the parts of you that never belonged, you ignite the fire by facing what you've ignored, the conversation you've postponed, the risk you've avoided, the promise you've broken to yourself. Fire doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who move. And when you move toward fear, toward pain, toward truth, you rub two realities together. And that friction is the spark. It's uncomfortable, it's ugly, it's raw, but it's the most honest moment you'll ever have. Because in that second, you're no longer acting, you're becoming. You don't need a grand plan. You don't need approval. You just need the courage to strike. The fire within is not emotion. It's not adrenaline. It's identity. It's who you are when there's nothing left to prove, when there's no audience, when no one's watching. It's what gets you out of bed when the dream has turned into a discipline, when you're building without applause, when the results are invisible, but the mission still demands your devotion. The fire is what keeps you walking when everything in your body says sit, when the weight doubles and your pace stays the same, when life hits hard and you hit harder, not louder, but deeper. Fire feeds on sacrifice. You must give it something to consume. Your excuses, your distractions, your lies, the stories you've told yourself about why you can't, why you shouldn't, why you're not ready. Burn them, every last one, because if you don't, they'll smother the flame, and you'll carry the smoke of your own unlit potential until it chokes you. The fire needs air, yes, but it also needs courage. The kind of courage that doesn't ask for reassurance. The kind that walks into the forest, not knowing what waits, only knowing that staying put is spiritual suicide. You want more from your life? Then bring the fire into your rituals, into your relationships, into your work. Stop showing up like you're checking a box. Show up like it's war. Like this day is the last test before the gates open or close. Because that's what it is. Every moment is a match. Every choice is a strike. And the flame either grows or it dies. You can't coast on yesterday's blaze. Fire doesn't care about your past. It only cares about what you give it now. Pain is not the enemy of the fire. It's the forge. Every hardship, every heartbreak, every betrayal, it's wood. Stack it. Feed it. Let it fuel the inferno. The worst things that ever happened to you were not curses. They were kindling, if you can use them. But most let them rot. They bury the memory. They avoid the scar. But the scar is sacred. It's proof that you've survived heat before. And you didn't melt. You hardened. So now stop running. Light it all. Turn every ounce of your suffering into power. And when the fire burns long enough, it changes your presence. You stop needing to prove anything. People feel you before you speak. They sense something ancient in your voice. Like you've walked through flames and made a home there. Like you've been to war with your own doubt and came back crowned. That's when your fire stops being for you and starts guiding others. That's legacy. When your flame becomes a torch. When you stop lighting fires just to burn bridges and start lighting them to show the way. But none of this happens if you keep playing cold, if you keep numbing instead of igniting. Fire doesn't wait for comfort. It demands discomfort. It demands friction. It demands action. And no one hands it to you. You earn it. You awaken it. And once you do, the game changes. You stop surviving. You start shaping. You stop dreaming. You start becoming. Because the fire doesn't want your plans. It wants your commitment, your blood, your belief.